Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Welcome aboard, everyone. I'm Smiles Lewis. Welcome to Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. This is the weekly news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka the Anomaly Archives. And this is not a live show today, but it is Wednesday, May 28th, 2025, our usual day for doing this show. You can find out more about us at our website, anomalyarchives.org. And of course, we would encourage you to sign up for free or for however much you can afford at our patreon.com/anomalyarchives page. We're going to be quickly going through some news headlines at our Flipboard, which you can find at flipboard.com/@anomalyarchives. And let's get right to that. Oh, yes. But before I go into that, man, we had such a great time this past weekend, Sunday, with our good friend Adam Gorightly giving a presentation, the Bob Beck Collection Space Age Photos from the Past. Wow, what amazing images, these crystal clear, mostly color photographs from the classic age of the flying saucer movement, the contactees of the 1950s and 60s, and lots of photos from Giant Rock, and lots of just tangential information relevant to the study of UFOs and all the different people that were in those photographs. If you want to see that, you can sign up for the Anomaly Academy Cadet tier at $10 a month, and you get access to that and the growing back catalog of past monthly presentations, as well as access to the live events as they happen each month. So we'll have news on our upcoming monthly presentations for June and onward very, very soon. But yes, let's go to our Flipboard real quick here. So many fun things to go over with you that I think you'll enjoy. Excuse me. Yes. So if you've ever felt like someone's watching you, here's why. This is from a site I don't know that I'm familiar with called Sciencing. And it's, sciencing.com. And this definitely takes a much more, it's interesting. I mean, it's not invoking what I expected at first. I thought this was going to be an article about Rupert Sheldrake, one of my favorite fringe alternative science weirdos, who has this idea about morphic resonance, but who's investigated a lot of different parapsychological things, like the sense of being stared at, and these experiments where they have had people, in controlled scientific experiments, excuse me, by trying to see if they could determine when they were actually being stared at outside their range of visual perception or hearing perception, and with some interesting results. But no, this is much more akin to the idea that your brain is taking in all this information, and that you may, I'm not sure if they actually invoke the unconscious here, but yeah, this idea that your brain may have detected that you have been sighted by somebody, and that that could unconsciously influence you. But yeah, there's more about this over at sciencing.com. If you've ever felt like someone's watching you, here's why. Article by Joe Roberts from May 9th of this year. And lots of other great stuff in our Flipboard. Oh yes, Congress requires the Pentagon to address UFO disinformation. You know, this is an article by Alejandro Rojas, who has been writing for Open Minds Productions for some time. This is over at openminds.tv. And while disclosure isn't everybody's bag, it is obviously the topic of the day post 2017 with all the revelations of Pentagon alleged UFO UAP programs. And I think he does a good job in this article of explaining that, AARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, has been tasked with providing a report on this, on the issue of disinformation. And he gives great examples of here are examples that we know of that are not being reported on by AARO in their reports, at least not to date. But he gives all the claims from the live television show that is often talked about from 1988, where Doty and others have talked about, these claims of crash saucers and pickled aliens, and how that's all been shown to be pretty much disinfo. And in this paragraph here, the second paragraph, stories like this leave me wondering how much of the UFO mythos is disinformation created by the U.S. government and why. It sounds like another UFO conspiracy theory, but Congress is interested in this question also. They require, and here he links to the govregs.com U.S. code that's part of the enabling legislation for AARO. They require that the Pentagon's current UAP investigation program, AARO, produce a report that includes, quote, the key historical record of the involvement of the intelligence community with unidentified anomalous phenomena, including any efforts to obfuscate, manipulate public opinion, hide, or otherwise provide incorrect, unclassified, or classified information about UAP or related activities, unquote. And like I say, he gives some great examples here. He does invoke this idea that keeps coming up, and it is certainly valid to a point, this famous CIA effort that claims that the Blue Book was covering up witnesses who saw flights of the U-2 spy aircraft while it was still secret, and that they were classifying those as UFOs. Instead of as what they were, known aircraft, even though they were top secret. Well, okay, so yes, there's that example. There's a talk of the University of Colorado program, and he says even Roswell was a cover up, albeit not of the extraterrestrial kind. Unfortunately, the first volume of the AARO report whitewashes this event. According to the AARO report, in the 1990s, quote, U.S. Air Force's research did not locate or develop any information that indicated the Roswell incident was a UFO event, nor was there any cover-up by the USG. And yet, as he explains, there's tons of information about this, even if it's not verifiable that, say, General Ramey was ordered to create a disinformation or cover story with the weather balloon. But there's a lot of other examples. And they, of course, inevitably has to come back to, since he's talking about Doty, all the stuff having to do with Paul Benowitz, the Paul Benowitz affair. And in fact, he references our friend Greg Bishop's important book, Project Beta, that gets cited so much. He says, this brings us back to Doty, who was the first source of the claim that the U.S. Air Force took alien bodies to Area 51. He did so in a document claiming a cabal of influential people inside and outside of the government controls UFOs and alien secrets. If this sounds like the X-Files, it's because the show was allegedly based on Doty's stories, and where the link there to allegedly based on Doty's stories, that links to Greg Bishop's Project Beta over at Amazon.com. He doesn't actually cite it there, but that is a citation of a sort, I guess, with a hyperlink. But I don't actually recall if that is, in fact, mentioned in Project Beta. It's certainly a claim that's been circulated by Doty. So, but I'm not sure if it appears in Greg's book or not. But anyway, I do recommend you check this out. It's not a very long article, and I think you can get a good gist of why this is an important issue and should be looked at more fully. But it also reminds me of these quotes from James Lakatsky, who was the Defense Intelligence Agency program manager and part of the OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapon Systems Applications Program, which is often referred to as ATIP. And he has made some interesting statements in interviews with Jeremy Corbell, where Lakatsky says, and it's linked here on our website, the Anomaly Archives page for James Lakatsky, where he says, okay, I have seen in multiple cases what I call forged documents. They're forged, that they are documents talking about the programs that are not legitimate documents. And he's basically saying that these are on government servers. And Lakatsky says, they even covered this on an X-Files episode. Every special access program has a counterintelligence officer that's their job. It's their job. You might say, wait a minute, that, Jim and I could be counterintelligence, but we're not. But he also goes on, where is the other? No, I guess that is the quote I'm looking for. Anyway, the point is that there is a lot of disinformation that is just part of counterintelligence operations, just standard operating procedure. I do recommend that interview with Jeremy Corbell and interviewing James Lakatsky, and the link is there through our page for him over on the Anomaly Archives website. All right, shifting back to the Flipboard. Yeah, so I love this wonderful researcher, Dr. Julia Mossbridge. She's the executive director of the Institute for Love and Time. That's TILT, T-I-L-T, and a fellow at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And Fox News, of all places, ran this clip of her talking about this recent the Buga Columbia sphere, where there's this video of the sphere moving around over a town, and supposedly it crashed and has been retrieved, and there's been these investigations into it, and people are getting sick from it, and it's got these amazingly weird little etchings on it. You can find pictures of this online. I don't have them queued up, but it looks beautiful. It looks really fascinating. But I did have a part of this clip, and you can watch the whole clip by clicking through our Flipboard, but here is just a brief bit of that.
And actually trying to get international cooperation around these things, because like this, for instance, the sphere in Colombia, it's in a different country. So what are the rules about how we deal with something that's interesting that's found there? Having said all that, the sphere itself seems like kind of like an art project of a human. The sort of argument is that they show a video floating above the town of a sphere. Now, spheres or balls have round shapes, have been maybe the majority of shapes in terms that have been reported since the 1940s of UFOs. So that's pretty common, are these round things, right? If you look back at Project Sign, SIGN, you can learn more about that. But there's no connection that's made between the thing that was floating and then the sphere that was found, right? So you have to be kind of careful about making conclusions. It looks to me like a really cool art project that it reminds me of remember those obelisks of like smooth metal that were showing up in the desert in the US? Totally, could be the same artist. But it just opens up all these questions. So
anyway, there's more to that, and she has some more interesting commentary. It's not a very long clip, but I didn't want to play the whole thing. You can click through and watch on your own. But it's interesting, obviously this is the kind of thing. It's got UFO footage, video, and then a supposed recovered artifact. This is the kind of thing that gets a lot of press, and maybe a little surprising at how much. So over at people.com, People Magazine, is this headline: Mysterious Metal Sphere Sparks UFO Debate. Never seen a piece like this. It yet again cites Julia Mossbridge, and so she's getting some press out of this as well. And she is a very important commentator. I highly recommend all of her work related to UFOs. Most of what I've seen of her stuff related to UFOs and UAPs has come through the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. But here's another one over at Newsweek.com. UFO discovered in Colombia, scientist weighs in, yet again mentioning Julia Mossbridge. But neither of these articles mention something that is important to consider here, and that is that apparently infamous huckster media personality Jaime Maussan is associated with this object and a lot of the claims. And I would say right there, that is a big tell that this is likely, at best, an art thing, but more likely a hoax trying to make money. He is notorious for having been involved in so many of these cases. And so I would say exercise extreme caution and maybe even don't waste your time with this, other than go online and look at the images of the sphere. They are rather pretty and interesting. But again, as she indicates, the footage is problematic in terms of provenance and how you say chain of custody, in that the person who has made the claims that put forth the video is, you see the object moving around and then it supposedly crashes, but you never see footage of them, like of the crash and them retrieving it from the landed location. And so there's a break in the video testimony, so to speak, of this object. And again, but more importantly, I think Jaime Maussan's connection just makes this not necessarily that interesting. But I'm glad to see Julia Mossbridge getting some press, and she has some more interesting, like I say, some more interesting comments there at the Fox News clip, where she says some things that really remind me of our good friend Greg Bishop's ideas about the importance of looking at these anomalous UFO phenomena through the lens of an understanding of the importance of art in human civilization. And I strongly suspect that Julia has benefited from listening to our friend Greg talk about these things. All right, moving right along. Oh, okay. So I just want to also put out there again, I know I've mentioned this many times, this most important of events, the 2025 Archives of the Impossible, the AOTI conference in Houston at Rice University, this year's theme, UFO and the Impossible. The videos are up. There is an official Rice Humanities YouTube channel playlist. We've got it linked through our page on the anomalyarchives.org website for this conference. And I'm reminding you all of this because there has been some discussion online about, hey, what the heck's going on? Where are these videos? I've seen one or two of them posted by people who appear in them, but then when you search for them, you can't find them. That is because as of still earlier today, even though the message went out over a week ago about these being made available, all the videos are unlisted, as is the playlist. And I think this is definitely a mistake. I've communicated with Karen Austin and Jeff Kripal about this, and they're aware. They've gotten a lot of feedback, and it's in their best interest. All the other videos and playlists have been made public in the past. So I have no doubt that these will be made available soon. But in the meantime, you can go to Anomaly Archives and click through, and we got the playlist linked right there, and it's embedded in the page as well. So check that out. What else? Oh, yes. So if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I have an interest in ARGs, alternate reality games. I've been following their development and potential misuse and abuse since about 2001, when the Majestic ARG came out pre 9/11. And one of the leading people in this field is Joseph Matheny. I am so sorry. He is a chaotic fiction publisher, and he's the creator of Ong's Hat, also known as the Incunabula ARG. Anyway, we have a page where you can find out a lot more about him as well as ARGs over at our website. There's some new stuff that he's done recently and participated in, and we'll get to, oh yes. So one of those things is Art Bell. So we have, of course, a page for Art Bell and some links to, none of these pages are exhaustive, we update them as often as we can, but Art Bell, of course, it needs no introduction, but we've updated the page with links to his biography, The Art of Talk by Art Bell. and this artbellfiles.org website's archives of his material. And there is a new thing that's come out last year. I was unaware of this. This came out in September, and it's called First Time Caller, an Art Bell Tribute. And it features interviews with John Steiger, who is the archivist behind artbellfiles.org, as well as Leah Prime, who she may not be that well known in the UFO field, but she is another young up-and-coming researcher in the field and has a lot of bright and interesting things to say. And she's a huge Art Bell fan, so she is featured significantly in this audio tribute that is a YouTube channel you can watch on YouTube. And over at our Art Bell page, we've embedded it, as well as the links to the different parts of it. And also in this is interviews with Joseph Matheny, talking about his experience with going on Art Bell's show and how important arts shows were to him and his forays into the anomalous. All right, moving right along, there are other things that we have in our Flipboard, like, these interesting articles, Where the Weirdness Comes From. It's actually a couple years old. This other one, Initiation by Nightmare, which talks about sleep paralysis and chapel paralysis. So this idea of having dark nights of the soul kind of experiences that often serve as an initiation into other ways of thinking in other realms. But I also was reminded recently of with all the congressional hearings, there was a mock congressional hearing back in 2013 called the Citizen Hearing on UFO Disclosure. And so I recently came across the website citizenhearing.org. This was held at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., April 29th to May 3rd, 2013. Now, this is not to be confused with the also legendary 2001 National Press Club UFO disclosure event put on by Stephen Greer, but this one is equally interesting. I can't endorse everything in it, obviously, but there is a lot of content here, including, it's about 20 videos, and some of the people taking part are people like Stephen Greer, Grant Cameron, Nick Pope, Antonio Junius, Richard Dolan, Daniel Sheehan, Dr. Robert Wood, Roger Lear, and a host of other interesting people. Again, I do not endorse everything in these presentations. Peter Robbins is there, Peter Davenport, and it's broken down into a lot of different segments, like UFOs, Truth, Lies, and the Cover-Up, the Rendlesham Forest Encounter. Oh yes, Sergeant John Burroughs is there. Nuclear tampering, that obviously is a recurring theme in research and in the phenomenon's interest in nuclear power plants, nuclear powered military devices, and atomic testing. Anyway, lots of great material there for folks to dive into. Like I said, there's like 20 videos, so we're talking probably at least 20 hours of footage total. And then continuing along, I mentioned Rupert Sheldrake, and sure enough, he has this new post over at his Substack, The 3 Theories of Morphogenesis, mechanistic, vitalistic, and organismic. I'm a huge fan of Rupert Sheldrake, and if you're not familiar with morphogenetic theory, his ideas about morphic resonance, it's kind of hard to explain, but it has to do with this idea that there must be some other mechanism of transmission for form in development in biological organisms, and this has a lot of deep potential implications beyond simply the biological cell growth and that sort of thing as pictured here. But highly recommend you inform yourself about his ideas about morphogenetic fields and so forth. I think it is that hypothesis, that milieu of thinking, that got him into so much trouble, got him branded as, having written the book most suitable for burning. And I think he's a very important thinker when it comes to trying to understand strange phenomena that seem to have a parapsychological nature. There's also this new video from Whitley Strieber. It's pretty long, where he's describing his recent contacts with the Greys. I haven't had the chance to digest that, but you might want to check that out. There's also this Sol Foundation new series, Sol Briefing, for May 2025, featuring Mark von Rennenkampf, giving a synopsis of what's going on in the UAP scene in terms of attempts to get disclosure happening. So if that's your thing, you might check that out. What else? Oh, yes. Over at uapmed.org is this article, From Sensationalism to Support Navigating Media Narratives on UAP and Mental Health. One of the main people behind this is Ted Rowe, and this is a very important issue with regard to experiencers. And I do encourage you to check out this website and their articles there. This one's written by Sarah Harmon from earlier this month. And there's so many times that the narrative is couched in terms of ridicule and the laughter curtain, so to speak. And these are the things that we are so desperately trying to overcome, just to reduce the stigma. And of course, that's what allegedly the whole rebranding of UFOs as UAP is partly to do with. But as I've lamented, so much of the reportage post 2017 focuses on military sightings, military hardware, military electronic sensors, and not close encounter experiences or the experiencers. And it's organizations like UAP Med that are really trying to change that. Let's see. Oh, yes. Oh, so good friend Greg Bishop sent me a link to this video, and I'm just going to play the first few minutes of it, or a first few seconds, or a little bit of it. I have, like a lot of people, significant issues with AI and the proliferation of it. Its use as for art and media. And yet I have to admit, I have always found computer animation to be fascinating and something I really paid attention to, setting aside the issues of how AI and the data farms needed to fuel our hunger for these technologies and how damaging they are for our already damaged environment. It does bother me sometimes to see them used. Plus, a lot of them I find very disturbing. Well, this is kind of disturbing. There's some imagery in this that may not be for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. And it's a couple minutes long, but it's 4.5 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I want to just play the beginning of it and then compare it to something else real quick. Oh, and so, yes, it was Greg Bishop that sent me the link to this, and it's by a fellow who he has interviewed, who is a crop circle hoaxer, but who is one of these people who has had enough strange experiences with UFO, with crop circles, to believe that there's something else going on beyond just them doing this art project, this hoaxing. And there is an artistic quality to it, obviously, but what is this fellow's name? I'm drawing a blank right at the moment. Oh, Damon Packard. And so he has two different YouTube channels, and this is from, I guess, his main one, but it's called Crop Circles 2025. And here is the first little bit of that.
We were doing experiments in the mid-1990s, trying to see could the power of the mind in any way have something to do with it. And we'd done an experiment where we'd drawn a crop circle, sort of basically fairly simple, 6 circular elements in a line. And we had performed some kind of meditation, if you want to call it that, up on a hillside. And that exact shape appeared as a crop circle that very night. We didn't make it, we had nothing to do with it, and it was perfect. It was a beautiful formation.
Something within you is remembering. Now, it can be your genetic memory, because we are all ancient. Our genetic memory is millions of years old. And are we connecting into our own ancestors who had an understanding of non-verbal communication, of using symbols as mandalas to move into other states of consciousness? Is that something within us that's been triggered by these symbols?
It's a symbol. And a symbol is something that describes that which is beyond the physical.
The circle is a symbol of God, of heaven, all that is, divinity, spirituality. It is a symbolic gesture of a reconciliation between the earth and heaven.
So you can click through and watch the whole thing. That's about a third of it. But in looking at his YouTube channel and searching for more information about Damon Packard online, he has a second YouTube channel where this same video, I guess he was experimenting with AI, I guess like 2 or 3 years ago. So this one has just come out in the last week or so here in 2025. But here is the beginnings of more or less the same video, but with lesser advanced AI on his other YouTube channel. And I would warn you, if you do look at his YouTube channel, there are some other very disturbing AI created videos. But anyway, just here's a little bit more of the one from a couple years ago.
We were doing experiments in the mid-1990s, trying to see could the power of the mind in any way have something to do with it. And we'd done an experiment where we'd drawn a crop circle, sort of basically fairly simple, 6 circular elements in a line. And we had performed some kind of meditation, if you want to call it that, up on a hillside. And that exact shape appeared as a crop circle that very night. We didn't make it, we had nothing to do with it, and it was perfect. It was a beautiful formation.
Anyway, again, I'll post the links to both of those in the show notes for tonight's episode at the anomalyarchives.org webpage for this episode. Yeah. And just for what it's worth, the music in both of those videos is the same track that is from the soundtrack to the Fire in the Sky movie, the dramatization of the classic Travis Walton abduction, which of course was horror movie-fied for sensationalistic movie going purposes and not very really accurate as far as his experiences allegedly on the craft. But anyway, moving right along, we've got links that you can find there to Sir Arthur Conan, an interview with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle circa 1927 that actually has, here we go. That's old real 1927 Fox Newsreel interview with the author and spiritualist. And that's over at publicdomainreview.org. So always interesting to learn more about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his interest in the paranormal. What last other things? Oh, these other two interesting articles, one from paranormaldailynews.com. The frontal lobe is blocking psychic abilities. That's pretty interesting. And then this SCU article. So at paranormaldailynews.com is this article by Craig Wheeler in a newish study published in March of 2024 in the journal Cortex, an open access journal devoted to the study of the nervous system and behavior. Scientists temporarily suppressed the left medial middle frontal lobe and then ran tests for psychic ability on the test subjects. Subjects that had this area suppressed did better on psychic testing than control subjects. This sounds, I think I may have already reported on this sometime back, but anytime I see, quote unquote, recent psychic parapsychological related studies, I'm always wanting to direct people's attention there. And the article goes on to say the study is of a very respectable size and composition, comprised of 108 participants of varying ages, sex, and background, with 500 trials in the first go-round. The task was the same as previous testing. Anyway, that's pretty interesting. Want to check that out over at paranormaldailynews.com. And this other one, like I mentioned, is a press release from SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, over at explorescu.org. Groundbreaking SCU study identifies the evolving patterns of activity by unidentified anomalous phenomena. The new paper is the fourth in a series investigating post-World War II UAP activities. And some of the key findings. Number one, initial atomic weapons focus. UAP activity showed a consistent interest in key developments and deployments in military atomic warfare facilities. They showed early interest in radioactive materials, plants, the atomic weapons assembly facilities, and the atomic weapons stockpile sites in the late 1940s. In later years, they showed interest in the intercontinental ballistic missiles and other atomic deployment sites. Skipping ahead to number two, transition in activities. Early UAP activities, 1945 to 64, were characterized by high visibility and potential inferential messaging via their actions rather than through communication, with some limited contact efforts in the late 1950s, followed by a significant shift to nighttime activities involving possible human behavioral studies by the 1970s. Some of the other key points, numbers 3, 4, and 5, recognition and contact. During the earliest period, UAP activities were overt and often involved display-type activities with close approaches involving radical flight characteristics and interactive flight UAP operating formations. Jumping to number 4, behavioral studies. Later years saw a shift in UAP activities towards longer observations by witnesses, close UAP approaches to small groups of observers, and UAP actions that could be interpreted as basic human behavioral studies rather than contact efforts. And number 5, UAP activity progression. UAP activities became more clandestine over time with an increasingly negative perception by witnesses of their behavior. And there is more you can read there over at explorescu.org. And there's a lot of their other research there as well. So, yep, tons more stuff over at our Flipboard from past years, days. And of course, you can find out more over at our website, anomalyarchives.org. That's going to be it for today. Thank you for joining us. Click the like, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. And please consider going to patreon.com and signing up for either for free or however much you can donate. We need your help. We are a nonprofit 501c3 charity group, and we hope you'll support our work. Good night.